Hello, I'm Hal Lublin.
And I'm Mark Gagliardi.
Since the dawn of humanity, one issue has gone unsettled. With the fate of the world in the balance, we're here to settle, once and for all. Best Gorilla.
That's right. Don't worry, everyone. We got this.
Podcast should have a theme song. Podcast should not have a theme song. Yes, they should. No, they shouldn't. They sound good. Yeah, but people are just going to skip past it. You know what? You're right. We got this.
Hal, you and I have done episodes about Star Wars. We've done episodes about Star Trek.
Yeah.
Have we done a wrestling episode? I don't know if we've ever done a wrestling centric episode.
We have a lot waiting on that.
Sure.
There are a lot of topics. We have people lined up. Yes.
Yeah. But this, of all topics, seems the most Hal's wheelhouse of the topics that we have done.
Yes.
Will you please, for the people of the world who do not know your obsession with gorillas, fill the people of the world in on your bona fides on this one.
My parents, my mother's nickname was Monkey. She would do a monkey clap where she would do her hands together, the back of one hand on the top of the other above, like a monkey clapping.
Sure.
And then that name got shifted over to me.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere around 2000, my parents bought me a stuffed gorilla.
Yeah.
From Toys R Us, part of the Animal Alley line, that just sat in the bedroom at their house, my bedroom at their house, which I was only in for, I would say, like 3-4 months.
Mm-hmm.
So it just always sat there. He sat there. My mother passes away. And when you lose a parent, this has been my experience. Maybe other people do as well. You find things that you attach yourself to that make you feel connected to them. And it could be a role you take on within the family. Like, I'm going to become the family storyteller, or this sweater has become very important to me because it's one that I got from her. So I just, for one trip home, this is in the last, 10 years, maybe even more recent. I threw him in the suitcase. He's right here. This is Silver, the silverback gorilla.
Hi, Silver. It's nice to see you.
He's waving.
Yeah.
I brought him home and I just started to get into gorillas. First, I started buying more of him. So I have 10 or 11 his size. And then one I thought was his size that is like gigantic.
Wait, you thought he was at that size when you saw him online and bought him and you were like, yeah, this is the same size as all of the other gorilla stuffies that I have.
I thought it said 12 inches, not 12 feet. And it's big. And it arrived, this was like early lockdown, and it arrived, this box shows up at the door of my apartment, and it is huge. And I have no idea what this could possibly be. What did I order that's this large? And I open it and I start to see a paw and a big head. I was like, oh, this is the wrong size. How great is this? Cause at that point, that gorilla took up half of our home. But through that, I just started reading more about gorillas. And thanks to TikTok, I watch a lot of gorilla content, even more gorilla content on Instagram. I'm kind of intrigued by just the creatures that they are, how intelligent they are, how rare they've become thanks to stupid humans. And they're like alpha predators. There are very few land mammals that they can't kill. Yeah. However, they're exceedingly gentle. Exceedingly gentle in general. Even down to Harambe, who I think they misinterpreted what Harambe was doing and Harambe was killed. But there are other gorillas where a child falls in the enclosure and the gorilla just watches over the child and pets it and makes sure none of the other gorillas touch it. And then when the humans come over, the gorilla moves away and the humans are able to rescue the child. So they're just extraordinary creatures. And it's very interesting how they're portrayed. Like some of the most famous pop culture characters are gorillas or apes or orangutans.
Well, I think they're the easiest to anthropomorphize because they share 97 to 99, depending on who you're asking, % of human DNA. So we see a lot of ourselves in them.
Yes, I think that's fair.
Yeah. So this is a delightful topic that I am very excited to dive into. And this is a topic that takes us from 2 different Hanna-Barbera cartoons up through actual gorillas, through video games, through movies, through all kinds of different bits of pop culture. So we're going to talk about many of the famous gorillas that are out there, some real and some fictional.
When you say some, there's one that's real.
I would say gorillas, Gorilla Talk. Is it Gorillas of TikTok or is it Gorilla Talk?
It's Gorilla Tix is the account.
Oh, Gorilla Tix.
Yes. And then they're like Gorilla IG, Gorilla Tube on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I can't figure out what the deal is. It's some sort of preserve for gorillas.
Yeah.
So they have their own sort of like cage areas indoors, and then they have a huge outdoor area where they can go and explore. But the majority of these videos are ASMR, and it's gorillas eating. And when gorillas eat, it's fascinating because they eat similar to humans. Like there's something very similar, especially in their eyes, because they have very intelligent, soulful eyes. The eyes, we would say that they're human, but there's obviously something to them that makes them special and amazing to watch. And they eat like monsters also because they don't close their mouths and they smack. They eat whole
By the way, I like that you call it
smacking. Yeah, because they go like,
like, I look at these videos and I'm like, oh, I'm just like this gorilla. Nope, never mind. That gorilla just shoved a whole head of lettuce in her mouth and is just going to eat the whole thing. Because that's another thing that gorillas have is this ability to digest lots and lots of fiber. And because they can digest so much fiber, two different things happen. One is they can eat massive amounts of vegetation in its entirety. You know, they can eat the stems and all the different parts of a vegetable that normally we would throw away. But also because they have so much fiber, the best versions of Gorilla Talk are when they just loudly and sometimes hilariously self-consciously pass gas.
Yes, because of the amount of roughage they're eating.
Yeah.
And that's how they get their water. They don't drink water out of rivers. They actually don't like water. So you'll see them in rain try to seek cover and sort of run away for it, or orangutans in particular will hold like a big leaf over their head. But they get water from their food and they're constantly farting. So you see it in nature films, but in these in particular, there's a thing that every gorilla does when there's a fart. And I'm going to do an impression of it right now. So
I wish that everybody could see this.
I'm just going to do the whole thing, but I'm going to vocalize it. You'll know immediately what's happening.
Vocalize the audio version of a gorilla farting.
So here's all of it. So here's the, it's a big head of lettuce. Like, what was that? Who did that? And they go back to it. And that's great. Even better than that is when there's a famous video of Coco the gorilla, who obviously is
major
probably
contender.
a finalist by dint of being the only gorilla whose name you know from all these. Although almost every local zoo has a gorilla where you know the name, like then you know that your local gorilla. But Coco is the most famous of all. She had a really deep sign language vocabulary, but she loved Mr. Rogers, loved him. He came and visited her, and he sat essentially in her lap, and she started. You would think she was growling because of this like guttural noise that comes up from her. And you see Mr. I don't think I've ever seen Mr. Rogers frightened. And he doesn't like really get scared, but there's definitely, you can tell he's like, if he cursed, he'd say, what the F is going on right now? What is the thing doing? But he asks, he's like, what's that? Is she mad? And then she goes, no, it's a purr. It's a purr. When gorillas are happy, they make this like noise. So there are videos where a gorilla is eating and you hear like they each eat separately. So they get their own food. You hear somebody like the next door neighbor do it. And then the gorilla that's in there he starts doing it too. Oh. So it's this happy gorillas. Just, it makes me smile to hear it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Gorillas are wonderful every time and I don't know, I hope that most of the zoos where I am seeing gorillas these days are humane and kind and treat them well and have large enclosures. I know the Los Angeles Zoo has an amazing gorilla enclosure. I'm frequently, obviously, at Disney World in Florida, and Animal Kingdom has a wonderful gorilla enclosure there. And yeah, it's just, there's something very kind and gentle. You mentioned it before. They are an apex predator they're like herbivore apex predators. Like, don't make me come over there. I'm really enjoying this butternut squash that I'm just eating whole and raw. Please don't make me go over there and mess with you, because look, we both know how this is going to end. You're a human. or whatever you are. I am a silverback gorilla. I am in charge.
Two things, and then we can start getting it, because you put together a nice list. I added a few things to it.
Yeah.
And your favorite may not even be mentioned. We're going to mention a few. They might not be finalists. But it's always the journey, never the destination.
Exactly.
Have you ever seen a gorilla yawn?
I don't know if I've ever seen a gorilla yawn.
When you look at
Would I know if I've seen a gorilla yawn?
Yes, because when they eat, you see like a little bit of their teeth. And I love that they each eat bananas different. Like some will bite off the peel and eat the banana and then eat the peel. Some will just eat the whole thing with the stem. Some refuse to eat the stem and daintily throw it away.
Sure. Pull the peel out like Heathcliff pulling the bones out of a fish.
100%.
Yeah.
So gorillas generally, you look at them, they're like, oh, they look so cute. You almost imagine they would have almost like human teeth, and then they yawn and you see like the biggest fangs you've ever seen.
Oh yeah.
And that so to say nothing of the fact that they all look like they came out of Muscle Beach, like fresh off of a set.
Dude is jacked.
Yeah. They've got these gigantic sharp teeth. I mean, I guess you see it in King Kong. He shows his teeth all the time.
Yeah.
Donkey Kong has human teeth.
Sure. Donkey Kong looks like he has dentures. Like Donkey Kong has my grandmother's teeth late in her life, except Donkey Kongs don't fall out every once in a while.
Is it Grampy Kong? There is an old Kong. There's like a whole Kong. There's like Diddy Kong. There's the Funky Kong. There's like a whole bunch of Kongs.
Funky Kong sounds like a dance.
It does. Of course, it's Donkey Kong. That's what he does at the beginning to make the girders bend in the original Donkey Kong. That's called the Funky Kong. But yeah, that is fascinating to me. Did I say the other thing? Was that it?
I don't know. I interrupted you and I apologize.
Oh no,
you said that they open their mouths and you see these giant teeth.
Yes. Cranky Kong is the grandpa. Thank you, Ken.
Yeah.
The other thing is, have you ever seen where they spin themselves in a circle?
No.
You can find like gorillas spinning. There's some of them like standing in a kiddie pool and doing it. They basically go on one foot and just spin as fast as they can. And the reason they do that is basically to get themselves high. It makes them dizzy, and like that feels good for a second. So that is why they spin like that.
You mentioned something earlier that I kind of love, is that everybody has their favorite gorilla, and we may or may not talk about them. And for a lot of people, I think their favorite gorilla is the gorilla at their local zoo, because you go and you watch and it almost feels like I mean, obviously not to them. They're like just another human, but you can sort of see a bit of yourself in them. And one of my favorite moments I ever had was at the LA Zoo. In the gorilla enclosure, this big silverback is looking at all of the little kids playing around, and at one point just throws a hand up on his hip, and back to the crowd, throws his hand up on his hip. I took a photo of it, and this photo, if you could caption it, I've never seen a character look more like, I'm not going to tell you again. You know what I mean? This gorilla had this like full on back sass. I was like, you recognize identifiable moments in behavior. Mm-hmm. And some of the gorillas that we're going to talk about, really probably only one outside of the gorillas of Talk, or Gorilla Talk, Gorilla TK is an actual gorilla, Gorilla Tix. Mm-hmm. And that's Coco. And we can go into Coco, but should we talk about some of the fictional gorillas first? Because this really does run the gamut. We've got, again, a couple of cartoon gorillas, video games, movies, all kinds of stuff. Where do you want to start?
Let's start with maybe the most famous pop culture gorilla, which is King Kong.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating about King Kong, obviously whispered in the same breath as Godzilla versus Kong finally put them together. And King Kong is one of those characters that's interesting because he is a villain. Well, not a villain. He's a monster. He's scary. Yeah. He destroys things, but ultimately he is gentle. It's love that kills him.
'Twas beauty killed the beast.
Exactly. Yeah. His love of Fay Wray's character is what does him in. And of course he comes back over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. And even to now the modern version, he's way more of a hero. You know, I thought he was the good guy in that movie. And
I did too.
I enjoyed it.
I think it's because they added on Kong Island. They were like, how are we going to make King Kong the good guy in this? I know we'll have all these other giant monsters that really are villains. And that's, King Kong versus the dinosaurs and those huge battles of, in this case, it was Naomi Watts' character that is in danger and King Kong is saving her from assorted other monsters on this island. And also being a person who works at Universal Studios, the number of times I have ridden the original King Kong ride, which burned down, which was a giant animatronic King Kong, and now is the Peter Jackson version of King Kong in a 3D experience there. Yeah, my life, there's so much King Kong in my life, just in my everyday going to work. I mean, there's a giant blue neon King Kong hanging off the side of City Walk as I walk from my car into my show.
Yeah.
So
I mean, he's been iconic for 90 years.
And it makes sense because the notion of, 1933, that makes sense. Literally, it's been almost a century. We kind of love that notion of the misunderstood monster ever since Mary Shelley, Yeah.
Yeah. And I think oddly enough to say this, evolution of that character to now in the last movie he was in, he knew sign language and he had a relationship with a little girl that he took care of her. So you see that, you can't just do, he's a monster, but he also likes this woman. There's a little bit of gentle. They actually found a way to take the character and use that pathos to give him more character. And that made him a lot more compelling. I thought Skull Island was great, not just because of Mark Evan Jackson in it, but it was just a well done movie. And
I loved it.
He's just a fun creature. And I think digital effects, there are a lot of times where not having the practical stuff, you kind of lose something. Yeah. I think it made him better as a character.
Absolutely.
You get all of the human elements of him. You get those little bits of what we share with gorillas in that character. That's very clear as opposed to the stop motion in 1933 where he sees the woman and his eyes get big and they almost go like, boy,
yeah. That's that sort of that Ray Harryhausen style of I can have 5 different facial expressions and most of them make me look like the Bumble from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Yeah. Thank you. And I think a lot of that can be attributed to the technology that Peter Jackson was working with in that movie, and B, the absolute brilliance of Andy Serkis. Andy Serkis as a stop motion actor is so, so wonderful. I will always have a special place in my heart for that movie because when it first came out, I went to see that movie on a date at the drive-in theater in Los Angeles. And it was pouring down rain. So I watched the first King Kong or the big first of the Peter Jackson King Kong series of movies through windshield wipers for 2 hours. And it was just a cool, weird, fun, amazing experience and a great way. I just loved that movie anyway. I thought the art design was amazing. The art deco of that version of New York is beautiful. And the idea that King Kong is going to bust out of a movie theater and, then slide around and laugh in Central Park on the ice. It's just it's a beautiful character. And I think of all of these different versions of a gorilla, of the fictional versions of a gorilla that we see, I think this is the most human, or we see the most humanity in this version. Would you agree?
I would agree. That's, again, what makes him compelling and something Peter Jackson did that was then continued by the other filmmakers to whom he's been handed off.
Yeah.
But I think there are a few more that are also kind of human. We're going to get to them after this break. So you listen to this, and when we come back, we're going to talk about more gorillas. Can you believe it?
Yeah, I can. Were you talking to me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm Yucky Jessica.
I'm Chuck Crudsworth.
And this is Terrible,
a podcast where we talk about things we hate that are awful.
Today we're discussing Wonderful, a podcast on the Maximum Fun Network.
Hosts Rachel and Griffin McElroy, a real-life married couple, discuss a wide range of topics. Music, video games, poetry, snacks.
But I hate all that stuff.
I know you do, Yucky Jessica.
It comes out every Wednesday, the worst day of the week, wherever you download your podcasts.
For our next topic, we're talking Fiona, the baby hippo from the Cincinnati Zoo.
I hate this little hippo.
Hey, when you listen to podcasts, it really just comes down to whether or not you like the sound of everyone's voices. My voice is one of the sounds you'll hear on the podcast Dr. Game Show, and this is the voice of co-host and fearless leader Joe Firestone.
This is a podcast where we play games submitted by listeners, and we play them with callers over Zoom we've never spoken to in our lives. So that is basically the concept of the show. Pretty chill.
So take it or leave it, bucko. And here's what some of the listeners have to say.
It's funny, wholesome, and it never fails to make me smile.
I just started listening and I'm already binging it. I haven't laughed this hard in ages. I wish I discovered it sooner.
You can find Dr. Game Show on MaximumFun.org.
And we're back. Before we jump back in, I apologize. Our producer Ken pointed out I called Andy Serkis a stop motion actor. He is a motion capture artist for those movies. Stop motion was the 33 version. Motion capture, the much more advanced version. And why we saw such a more advanced version of what King Kong's expressiveness was capable of. So apologies for that. You knew what I meant.
I not only did I know what you meant, I didn't even notice. That's how much, like when there's like one letter missing, mine just sort of fills it in. All right. You want a couple more? We talked about like the humanity, I guess, of King Kong. Does it get more human than a gorilla that wears a bowler, suspenders, and shorts and lives in a pet store at a giant bird cage, basically?
Sure. Oh, Magilla Gorilla. That shopkeeper cannot sell you.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to buy you.
Yeah, nobody wants to buy a clothed gorilla, especially one that's a constant flight risk.
Yeah, constant flight risk. And the people that come in to buy Magilla Gorilla, I think they have nefarious intent. They're going to use him to break into a bank. They're going to use Magilla Gorilla for, they really just want muscle. What they want is, the version of a gorilla that they want is muscle that's not going to talk back.
Yeah, they want Magilla Gorilla to break into the Watergate, to the Democratic the DNC headquarters.
Hal, if you could buy Magilla Gorilla to commit a crime, what would that crime be?
Card counting. Because I know he'd do it out loud. But at the same time, it's such a distraction.
Yeah.
That you could commit another crime. Because everybody, like Ocean's 11 would have been like a 5-minute heist.
Everybody in the security room of that casino would be like, guys, come look at this. There's a gorilla card counting at table 42.
Aim every camera at that. Hurry.
Are we recording? Hit record. We're sending this to TMZ. Don't mind that Scott Kahn's over there dressed like a waiter. Aim the camera at the gorilla.
Yeah, he's fun. There's no way he's going to win. But
Magilla Gorilla it's such a dumb, fun premise that you go, what was happening in the Hanna-Barbera offices in the mid-1960s when you're just sitting around going, okay, we need cartoon ideas. I got it. A pet store that cannot unload this gorilla.
I mean, it's a good premise.
Yeah.
What could have been happening in the 60s to create weird ideas? I wonder.
Yeah, who knows?
Could possibly have been.
Here, put this stamp on your tongue.
Time for our lunch break. Now, I think it was the 70s maybe the early 70s that we got Grape Ape.
Yeah, about half a decade later. Yeah.
Yeah. Like on the heels of Scooby-Doo, and now every single, like there's an animal and a group of teenagers and they solve mysteries. Grape Ape, who also wears like a college sweater and a little college hat.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
You were like, what is the idea of Grape Ape?
Yeah.
Right? Like what, and I'll give you basically every Grape Ape. Like that I remember. Like here's what his deal is like Grape Ape, you can't fit in that chair. Grape Ape. Grape Ape, you broke the chair. Yeah. Grape Ape, you can't put on that baby's onesie.
Grape Ape.
Oh, he tore the onesie.
If I was a group of teenagers who was going into a town to solve a mystery or do anything, I think that having a Great Dane with me might make me a little less conspicuous than if I was traveling into a town with a 40-foot, because Grape Ape was not small.
No.
Grape Ape was humongous.
Huge.
Yeah. Of course, there was also the one with the shark. So who knows? What was the one with the shark?
Jabberjaw. The shark.
That's right. We'll save that for our Shark Week.
When we do Best Shark, it's
when we do Best
Meg
Shark
versus Jaws versus Jabberjaw.
You know what? I would take Jabberjaw any day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, he can talk. And Bruce, the shark from... Wait, we're not talking about sharks.
No, we're not talking about sharks. We're talking about animals that can talk, which leads me to Ape the gorilla in the movie George of the Jungle, starring Brendan Fraser. Ape the gorilla, a gorilla who speaks perfect English, wears glasses, and is played by John Cleese. Well, not played by, voiced by John Cleese.
Yeah, John Cleese isn't doing motion capture, nor is he getting into an outfit.
No.
He recorded that all from his house in Santa Barbara, I guarantee.
Listen, if we're going to talk about gorilla characters whose voiceover was recorded from their home, we'll get to another one of those later.
Oh, I'm excited. Yeah, I mean, I don't love that movie. I love the Jay Ward cartoon.
Yeah.
But I feel like I wouldn't think of Ape the Gorilla. Like I wouldn't put him on a tier. I'd say he's like B tier.
I feel like A tier is really only 3 gorillas that we're going to be talking about in the A tier. B tier has a lot of really fun, silly gorillas. They're sidekicks, like Ape the Gorilla's sidekick to George of the Jungle. Turk, played by Rosie O'Donnell in the movie Tarzan, a sidekick to Tarzan.
Yes.
Though I would argue, if we're going to jump over to that movie now, I would argue that Kala is the more compelling of the gorilla characters in that movie, voiced by the brilliant Glenn Close. She has that song, You'll Be in My Heart, which I love the way that movie did the songs, by the way. Even when the characters in the movie start the song like a regular movie musical, Phil Collins takes over like one verse in, like, no, I got this. And then you get Phil singing the rest of the song.
The dude couldn't play just one stage at Live Aid. He was like, put me on a Concorde to go to Philly.
Yeah.
I need to play both. I'm going to be the only one who does it. It's like he found out somebody was going to start a song that he'd written. He's like, no, I'm heading over now.
Whoa, I just thought of another amazing gorilla.
Who?
Thanks to Phil Collins. Do you remember the Cadbury commercial from a few years ago?
Remind me.
There was a Cadbury commercial where Phil Collins' is In the Air Tonight is the song of the ad. And the whole first half of the ad is just a close-up of a gorilla's face. Just deep, soulful eyes. Gentle, flaring nostrils, nodding along while Phil Collins' In the Air Tonight plays. And as the camera zooms out, you realize the gorilla is sitting behind a drum set. And as the kicks in, that gorilla throws down with an incredible drum solo. I encourage everyone to go watch this beautiful, beautiful bit of gorilla content. It's a Cadbury commercial. Anyway, I digress from the gorilla that we were talking
also
about.
Also not a winner. Yeah,
also
you
not
want to talk about a couple of other like B tier gorillas before we get
Mighty Joe Young feels
Mighty
like
Joe Young.
Yeah, Mighty Joe Young's fine. King Kong did it better.
Yeah, I would put Gorilla Grodd and the other gorillas of Gorilla City who are
this is DC or Marvel?
Escape me. This is DC. Gorilla Grodd is a Flash villain.
That's right.
Compelling. I've auditioned to play him. I would love to
Have
be
you really?
Gorilla Grodd. Yeah. I would have loved to play Gorilla Grodd, but I think he's a B tier. I think even now the Flash, it's more like people think of like Reverse Flash or even like Captain Cold. Like there are other guys that are in that rogues gallery along with him. He's not like the Lex Luthor to the Flash, but he's a major villain.
I didn't know who Gorilla Grodd was until we started looking into this episode.
Okay.
But he's cool. Like all the visuals of Gorilla Grodd that I've seen are cool. And I like the idea that it felt almost like a reverse to me where in so many different comic characters, it's a human who gets radiation and then they get the powers of some animal. In this case, it's an animal who gets radiation and then gets the powers of a human, namely the brain and the vocabulary.
Yes. And there's a whole Gorilla City, like there's a whole, and then some of them, when Central City was destroyed, helped the Flash rebuild it. Like there's a whole gorilla ecosystem there. There's worth noting and is beautiful. But, here's another, you want like a C tier gorilla?
Ooh, I didn't even know we had C tier gorillas on the list.
Have you ever seen the film adaptation? I believe it's from 1995 of the Michael Crichton novel Congo.
I have not seen that. I'm familiar with it. Or were they like named characters, or were they? I thought they was just like actual gorillas.
They're evil girls, but there is also a good gorilla.
Ooh.
Who knows sign language.
Who's a good gorilla?
And who wears gloves where when she does sign language, it turns it into words. And her name is Amy. So she goes, Amy, good gorilla. And so later on that Amy has to help out. But Amy the gorilla is one that came to mind when I was thinking, best gorilla. Another one who is not a gorilla. I feel like people will go, what about Optimus Primal? That's a robot that looks like a gorilla.
Yeah. Doesn't count. No.
There are no gorillas on Cybertron.
Listen, don't try to tell us that an AI is an actual brain. We're in the middle of a fight about that right now.
Yeah, please. We will not accept it.
Yeah.
Here's another. We've got, there are a number of gorillas from Planet of the Apes, but you called out one in particular.
Yes. Attar, played by Michael Clark Duncan, who is the second in command, I think, behind Tim Roth's character, who's a humanoid chimp, right? That's his, he was chimpanzee or a bonobo. I'm not sure, but, Attar is a just giant, jacked badass. Like that's Attar's job is, hey, do you want to see a gorilla in armor whoop ass? That's who Attar is.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've got King Gorilla from Venture Brothers, R.I.P. R.I.P. to a real one. Please donate money to the American Cancer Society in his name. Here's one that is from video. I have two from video games.
One huge one from video games and one B tier.
Well, no, two. They're both. I have two B tiers, and then we'll get to the A tier.
Yeah.
The newer one is Winston from Overwatch and Overwatch 2, who is another intelligent. I think he was like a lab subject, but he's an intelligent gorilla.
Gorilla. Well, hey, yeah, one of them gorillas.
This gorilla. Look, right. I turn into Christian Bale. Do you think this?
Do you think this gorilla is
gorilla walking in my light? Yeah, he's an intelligent gorilla. I've built an entire canon around him within the game that nobody will recognize but me, which is that he has a human son that he's looking for, but who he accidentally like sat on. So that kid is like 86, but he's like,
I like the idea that he's like, have you seen my son? And then when he turns around, you just see 2 feet. You're like,
you see 2 feet. You see the whole kid like,
just smushed on his butt.
Yeah. And so you're close to what he sounds like. He's like, where's Corey? Have you seen my son?
Corey.
I love Corey. I have a picture of him right here. Hold on. But that's the newer one. Fun character. The other started in a video game and then became the star of a major motion picture alongside.
Oh, yes.
Johnson, and that is George the Gorilla from Rampage. Now, what's different about this
white
is
gorilla.
Yes. In the movie, he is a gorilla who gets exposed to the gas that turns him into a giant gorilla. But in the video game, aren't they all people who got like mutated into animals?
Honestly, I did not know any of the backstory of Rampage until I saw the movie, which I actually really liked. I liked that movie a lot. I thought The Rock was great in it. It's super fun. The Rock's done a ton of movies where you're like, this is middling and awesome. Like San Andreas.
The video game version is just like, that's the ultimate.
Yeah. The classic pizza parlor, mid 80s, climbing up the sides of the buildings. I didn't care, honestly, what the mythology of it was. I just was excited to see all these big creatures climbing up buildings.
Yeah. You want to make buildings fall down and eat people on dynamite and then spit out fire.
Yeah.
But he looks like he's a mix between King Kong and our other finalist, the apex predator of video games, Donkey Kong. Now, you remember the famous quote, you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. In this case, you either die a villain or you live long enough to see yourself become a hero, which is what Donkey Kong has become thanks to Donkey Kong Country and all the games.
Sure.
You know, initially it was just.
We know Junior helped.
Yeah. Donkey Kong Jr. Then there's Diddy Kong, which I think is like his nephew. Sometimes it's just a little gorilla. Sometimes it's his nephew. It's a little shady. You have Cranky
Is he a
Kong,
hero?
Funky Kong.
Is he actually a hero? Or is he a hero by comparison? Because I feel like in his own games, he's the hero. But if you look at a game like Mario Kart, he's kind of up there with Bowser as like a heel, isn't he?
No, I think he's just.
Or am I just projecting my old thoughts about who Donkey Kong was?
I think he's just big.
Yeah.
I think you put that on. I mean, in Super Smash Brothers too. Anytime you see him somewhere where he's like being violent with other characters and Mario is there, then you're going to assume, oh, there's Donkey Kong. He's still mad about it. And here he comes.
I assume they're permanently nemesis.
Yeah. But he's adorable.
He is adorable. Well, he has my grandmother's dentures.
He has your grandma's dentures.
Yeah.
He has the little poof of hair up top.
He does. He's very cute.
He wears a tie.
Yeah. And look, you mentioned earlier about the gorilla talk and how they each eat bananas differently. I would say of all of these characters, Donkey Kong has the coolest relationship with bananas.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Their weapons.
Relationship.
Yeah. There's a lot going on.
Yes.
Oh, and he's, Producer Ken says he is prominent in the new Mario film, which I've not seen yet. Seth Rogen plays Donkey Kong.
But we're not promoting that because we're on strike.
That's true.
But what's fascinating to me about him is the breakout star of Donkey Kong is Mario. It's really like a Mario game. Then that leads to Mario Brothers.
Well, that's who you're playing as, so that defaults to protagonist.
Right. So the fact that, they made sequels to the games because all popular games got sequels.
Yeah.
And the fact that that character has grown and gotten its own platform, it's very easy to, been very easy for Donkey Kong to kind of disappear or be like a background character, but he is pushed more to the front. I'd say in if you were to put together the 4 biggest Nintendo characters, it would probably be, for me, it would be Mario, Donkey Kong, Link, and maybe Samus.
Is Donkey Kong's legacy, though, based on, or is Donkey Kong's prominence and what we know about him based on that legacy? You know what I mean? Because I look at Donkey Kong and he does, but I guess I haven't played as many of his games as I would like to have. Of all of the game systems, the only ones I've ever owned have always been Nintendo systems. And obviously I'm now once again, I work at a place that now has 2 of our finalist gorillas, Donkey Kong and King Kong. But I don't know as much about Donkey Kong as I do about King Kong, I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know what his hopes and his dreams are. I don't know what he loves. I don't know what he dislikes.
He's into his
I don't know
family.
where he vacations.
He protects his jungle home.
Yeah. Okay. So look, that's a huge thing.
Yeah.
Sure.
For you and me, because of our age, we're most familiar with the original Donkey Kong because a lot of those more platforming side scroller games came out when we were either later in high school or going into college. So we might not have been playing them that much, and I haven't gone back to play them. Although I'd love to play the Donkey Kong Country game that released with the Switch. I just never bought it because it was so expensive. Maybe it went on sale. So you him as like a major bad guy, and I think he'd been in cartoons on TV at different points too. So the fact that he would live on, even if he hadn't had those other games, is impressive. We're speaking in conjecture here, but even without those, he's instantly recognizable and is as important as, like, you don't think of Inky, Binky, Pinky, and Clyde as being as important as Pac-Man. Like, you may not, outside of Pinky and Inky, you may mix up Clyde and Blinky and not.
Well, the game wasn't called Inky.
Right.
The game was called Pac-Man. The original game was called Donkey Kong.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So
he's A tier. Yes, even if he doesn't win, he's on the A tier.
I don't think
along right now with, I don't think he's the winner either.
Me neither.
He's great. I think now it's a 2-way race.
Yeah. So we're down
between one brilliant fictional gorilla and one brilliant actual gorilla. So let's talk about her. Let's talk about Coco.
Yeah, I think Coco, I don't know if you get the modern version of King Kong without Coco.
Yeah, because she was big in the 70s.
I don't think you get some of the modern, very modern interpretations of King Kong without Coco. I think Coco, Diane Fossey changed a lot of our understanding of what gorillas were and how they related to each other in their environment, because she was really the first person to go in and be able to study them and gain their trust and be inobtrusive and bond with them. And then, so, you learn all these things that you may have thought about them because maybe all you know is King Kong. Then Coco comes along and I think takes it another step forward because she's so intelligent. Because, she has favorite TV shows. She has this expansive vocabulary and can communicate with the scientists.
I'll give you just a little parenthetical by the numbers. Coco has been deemed to have between a 70 and a 90 IQ by human standards and knows 3,000 words, which is the equivalent of a 3-year-old child.
Yeah. I mean, what she represented for our understanding of what gorillas were capable of intelligence wise. I don't think you can overstate how important that was.
No.
And
she named her pet kitten.
Yeah, she named her pet kitten. She had a few pet kids. There was like a sort of a snowball situation there.
Oh. Were they all ball? Which people also conjectured whether or not she knew how to rhyme and thought it was fun to rhyme by naming her pet kitten All Ball. Were there a bunch of, was there All Ball 2, All Ball 3?
I don't know I think they may have had different names, but just the idea that she had a series of kittens, for various reasons. She wasn't doing it of mice and men and then they brought her a new one. But, she had to process grief and deal with caring for a pet and expressing her needs. And that's a very, very big deal.
Lived to 46, only died in 2018.
Yeah, lived to be 46 years old, which is a decent age. I think gorillas can live to like 50.
Yeah.
Maybe 50s top end or in the low 50s. So she lived a good life.
I wonder if it's the same, if she was at the same sanctuary where, the TikTok gorillas are, because it's a sanctuary in the Santa Cruz Mountains up near San Francisco. That's a big gorilla sanctuary.
I thought she was in more of like a lab setting.
Well, she was at the San Francisco Zoo originally and then moved to a gorilla sanctuary in the Santa Cruz Mountains, still in Northern California. I'm sure there was a lab involved. If your job is to study science, then you're going to have a lab not far. I assume.
The thing though.
Yeah.
It's not a popularity contest.
Yeah.
But do you think that Coco's impact on just people in general, where I think if you know her, and I think she is probably the best known real life gorilla worldwide, but everybody knows King Kong. And I think King Kong has maybe made more of an impression. It's not like who is the most gorilla. King Kong doesn't really help us understand more about gorillas. If at its best, it maybe helps us understand a little bit more about ourselves.
Yeah.
As a story and as the character and how King Kong is treated and how King Kong interacts with its own world and what we do to King Kong to bring him into this world that he didn't ask to be brought to. And, he's just sort of living his best life on Skull Island and keeps getting disturbed and keeps getting disturbed and keeps getting disturbed. But he's such an important part of culture.
Yeah.
Especially the original film, which is a masterpiece and a seminal film and was revived by Peter Jackson. That's after the 76 version with Jeff Bridges and Glenn Close again. So that character is like King Kong doesn't go away. King Kong continues to be popular.
Well, King Kong continues to be popular because King Kong is fictional. And I wonder if what we are looking at is I even pointed out the numbers based on human metrics, right? With Coco. And I wonder and I don't know what the answer is with this. I wonder if we are looking at when we see a gorilla and we see like you said, we see ourselves, we see our humanity in it. We recognize something universal and I don't want to say human because it's not a human, but primal, I guess, if it's a primate. We recognize something primal in a gorilla. I wonder if it's a quantity versus quality thing or a fiction versus reality thing, because we have a lot of King Kong and we have less of Coco, but is it more meaningful that Coco was a real gorilla that we saw this in? You know what I mean? King Kong was created by humans, so we can't help but lay our humanity onto King Kong. Coco is a real gorilla, and we see an IQ between 70 and 90 and 3,000 words and the intelligence of a 3-year-old human child in another species of animal that can communicate with us. I don't know. This is a tough one because it really boils down to, I think we've got one ubiquitous fictional character that shows us ourselves, and we have one less ubiquitous, less well known, but real gorilla that also, I would argue, shows us ourselves. And it's a question of quantity versus quality. It's a question of fiction versus reality. I don't know. What do you think?
I think as I was listening to you say what you just said, which is really well put, I had this epiphany of like, King Kong's not really a gorilla. And I'll explain what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
He was a stop motion figure manipulated by people. Then he was played by a person who was trying to recreate, how a gorilla moves.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying, I guess he is a gorilla. He's a gorilla in culture. I feel like it's Coco. I feel like Coco, as much as I enjoy watching King Kong and his various versions, I'm infinitely more invested and interested in watching actual gorillas and how they interact with each other.
Yeah. And I think Coco is the best example of that as a culture we have to aim toward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Wow.
People of the world. I can't believe a gorilla with an IQ higher than me is the answer to best gorilla, but here we are. 3,000 word vocabulary. That's twice as many words as I know. You've heard every word I know on this podcast.
Multiple
by the
times.
Way. I just use the same ones over and over again.
Some of them are in Huttese.
Yeah, half of them. 750. See, I could do that even with my 45 IQ. Yeah, Coco was an incredible creature that allowed us to communicate with an animal that we might not otherwise be able to communicate in that depth, who taught us about how that animal can relate to our culture, like even more about how their personality develops and how that's expressed and how gentle they are. Coco caring for kittens. That's probably the iconic image of Coco is her holding one of her kittens and petting it.
Yeah.
That she knew to be gentle, that she loved animals. It's just fascinating. It's like everything that I love about gorillas except for the farting. I feel like we didn't get enough of Coco farting. We didn't get to see her eat and fart a lot.
We didn't get to see a lot of Coco fart.
That footage is somewhere.
Yeah.
Release the Snyder cut. The best gorilla is the real gorilla, Coco the gorilla.
That's right.
Asked and answered.
Oh, man, I loved this conversation. Now I just want to go watch nothing but gorilla coverage all night. I say coverage like they're in the news right now. Footage.
Breaking news, gorillas.
Yeah.
Eating mangoes.
Oh, the best. I encourage everyone to go online and watch as much gorilla footage as you can. I encourage you to go to your local humane zoo and really see and enjoy and see the world through the eyes of a gorilla in the way that we saw the world through the eyes of Coco.
There are organizations and charities that are dedicated to preserving gorillas and putting them in wildlife habitats and helping these species to continue and grow. So I urge you to find one that speaks to you. And if you're able, get involved and help because, outside of what these animals can teach us about ourselves and themselves, they're animals that deserve to live on this planet.
Yeah. It's not just about us.
Yes. They have as much right to be here as we do.
Amen.
So anything we can do to help them is a good thing. And sometimes just watching the content and getting it eyeballs, that's help too, because it sort of spreads it around and helps work the algorithm to their advantage.
Yeah.
I want to thank Clifton Donahue for suggesting this one.
Yes, thank you, Clifton. This topic is closed, but there are many more topics to discuss.
Email us at wegotThisPodcast@gmail.com. The place to go is facebook.com/group/wegotThisPodcast. That's where it's all happening. That's where this suggestion came from and many more that we use because we see them there all the time. And I appreciate everybody who takes the time to interact there and make it a wonderful place to be on the internet. Thank you to producer Ken Plume, who you can support at patreon.com/Ken Plume. Be sure to check out Open Chat, his fun new series where he opens Star Wars toys, much to my dismay, and has guests join him, including me. And I made it through. My blood pressure is fine. Thank you to researcher Kate McManus, graphic designer Uri Kelman, and QA engineer Jen Alba.
And thank you, of course, to our musicians, Jonathan Dinerstein and Mike Furman, for our score and theme song, respectively. And thanks to you, the people of the world, for letting us talk about gorillas for an hour. And we would love to just gather the people of the world and sit and hold you in our laps and pet you like All Ball, Coco's kitten, while we fart. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. For Hal Lublin, I'm Mark Gagliardi.
For Mark Gagliardi, I'm Hal Lublin. And don't worry, everybody.
We got this.
We got this.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows supported
directly
by you.